Do you have an org with a private organization-wide default, and as a result, you have data issues because your users are creating duplicate records due to the fact that they can't see all the data? Well, that's a problem. But how do you solve it? I'm Jennifer Lee, Lead Admin Evangelist, and I invite you to watch How I Solved It, where we deep dive into a business challenge and see how one awesome admin chose to solve it. Today, I'm joined by awesome admin Erick Mahle. Welcome to How I Solved It.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's get to know you a bit better before we dive into your use case and solution. So I know you've been working in Salesforce since 2011. So can you share with us your Salesforce journey?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of everywhere. So started out as the accidental admin. Worked at a small organization and we had a CRM, and I think it was 25 of us, and I was a marketing analyst, and by default that somehow managed to turn into, oh yeah, you can handle Salesforce as well. And eventually grew into, back then we didn't have a lot of great tools like Trailhead. So I used to upskill by going a lot into like LinkedIn groups, and people would ask for help. And I would try to recreate the error on a dev org of my own. And if I could find a solution, I'd give it to them. And one day I was helping someone out and they reached out and they're like, look, we really need a contractor to come help out. And they made me a really interesting offer, which ultimately became my 2-week notice. And I started independent consulting and became an independent consultant. I grew an SI practice. Was a Salesforce partner as an SI for a couple of years. We had up to 9 employees. I had to take a break. When I came back, I went back to independent consulting. And then about 2 years ago, I switched over to the client side. So I was a senior director of CRM at a company called First Advantage, until eventually joining my current role here as a vice president of revenue operations at Lens Financial. So I got to experience quite a little bit, back and forth through the different areas in the ecosystem.
And who knew you were interviewing for a job when you were just answering questions for the community?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's funny how just being out there in the ecosystem, sometimes networking around, you just find all of these crazy opportunities.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So automating business processes is a top admin skill. So how did you get started learning Flow?
So interestingly enough, when after I got back from taking a break, I was talking to a former colleague of mine, Warren Walters, now Salesforce MVP. And as I was getting back into the independent consulting, he's like, Eric, like you've worked in Salesforce for a really long time. You should try Flows. Like you might really enjoy this. And Lightning Flow had just come out at that time, and I became addicted to it. Like I was just like, I felt right at home as someone that was playing with process builders at the time for the longest time, and I worked with a lot of developers and going to Apex. I was just amazed at what we could do declaratively still. And from there on, I mean, I was just building flows for everything. I was just like, I could solve it. If I could make my microwave run with Flow, I would have done it. So, and I got to work on a couple of projects that I found on my own, not like consulting, but just like personal projects to get experience with CRM analytics. And a lot of it involved Flow to like get the data where I needed, and even got we even did a data dreaming session where we were exposing it. And I had this before Safe Flow with like a million different elements. But yeah, it was just like tinkering around and just kind of learning, the different things, what you could get away with. The beautiful thing about Salesforce and Flows in general, that it's just the kind of thing that if you're a tinkerer, like you'll start learning the limits of what you can push and what you can create. So just trial and error, a lot of error, and ultimately some success.
That's great. So I know you're involved in Flow Fest. So, for those who
Yes.
haven't heard about it, what is FlowFest and how do people get involved in either watching it or participating? I think we've done, or you've done like 6 of them already or something like that.
I think so. Yeah. And yeah, we're next one will be number 7. So if anyone has ever seen like esports, like competitions, people playing all of these video games and trying to win global leagues, think of that for flows. And we've done different iterations of it. And at first, it was like whoever would finish a number of challenges the quickest and correctly. And we really kicked it up a notch in the last couple of versions where we did a qualifier round, and then the first 4 folks that would finish the top 4 would go into the final round, and they would share their screens. So like the final round is like the most exciting one, where like you're seeing like we pose a challenge to these top 4 competitors, and they're putting these challenges together, and it's kind of neat because you get to see how they take a challenge in different approaches. So some folks will start trying to jump into like building a loop to get this information. Others will like do like maybe some series of get records. And it's kind of cool because as judges, we can kind of commentate as they're going, right? And seeing like, oh wow, like this is an interesting take on the approach. So Flowfest at its core is supposed to be an educational event, but just something that
Mm-hmm.
we can have fun and share these best practices and all of these great things in an entertaining way.
So, like, about like how many people have you had watching, and then how many people did you have participating?
Yeah, so on average, we're getting about I think 1,500 to 2,000 people registering,
Wow.
which is really helpful. It's free to watch, it's free to spectate, but the registration really helps us show the strength in numbers. And a lot of folks were really there's a lot of work that goes into putting these together, and thankfully, like folks like the Trailhead Academy, a couple of ISVs, a lot of folks have helped support putting this event together. And all of these registrations are super helpful for that. Out of the 1,500 to 2,000, I would say that we have about 500, 600 all around the world that apply to compete. And typically, we're limiting to about 200 competitors per FlowFest. So we try to balance it out, try to get folks from different countries, try to give everybody a good chance. Somehow France has won 3 titles, and they went back to back, which I don't know what they have in their drinking water, but it seems to inspire a lot of flow building. But yeah, it's exciting. It's been the highlight of my journey in the Salesforce ecosystem. So many great people that I've got a chance to work with, so many folks, so much that we've learned along the way. It's been truly an honor to be working at these events.
Yeah, and it sounds very successful. I don't know if I could do a challenge where I'm time bound and I have to do it as fast as possible. So, kudos to all those people.
It's definitely an acquired skill. I've heard we did our first regional Flow Fest at Mile High Dreaming. Sorry, at Mile High Dreaming last year, and that was an interesting one because like folks were like, "How are they putting this together?" Like I've built flows all the time, but like when you put it under a time pressure, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
So it's it's definitely exciting, and it's not the way that you should be building flows,
Exactly.
on a daily basis. We
Exactly.
just try to consolidate it within like a 60-minute time frame instead of just going in every single direction and just like, okay, we can't make this 24 hours long. But yeah, so but it's cool, it's fun.
Great. So, let's get back to business. So, how I solved it. So, can you share with us the business challenge that you're trying to solve?
So where I was at First Advantage, we had a org with private org-wide defaults, which means we had to limit access to all accounts, contacts, opportunities. We First Advantage is a global, publicly traded organization, so we really had to be careful with what kind of information we were displaying to different teams. And one of the key challenges that we had was that we had subsidiaries and accounts from all across the world that different teams could be selling to a Walmart in Europe versus Walmart in North America. And we dabbled a little bit with duplicate rules, and we were having a lot of issue with the user experience because a lot of times folks were trying to create things and either they would get an error message or they couldn't find anything, so they'd create another account. And especially when accounts were like in different verticals, even if it's within the same region, but like you have like some accounts that had like some ambiguous verticals that could be in two different territories or departments, and we would just be creating these duplicates, and it was causing a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. So what we set out to do to really help give an amazing user experience was use the power of Flow to allow folks to have a window into a system admin view powered by a ScreenFlow to be able to search any account in the database. And what we wanted to do was to be able to give them the tools to be able to not only run that search, but also be able to find who the right folks to reach out to would be, and equally do things like request access to the account without giving out any sensitive information like financial information. So they could see if there's open opportunities, but they couldn't see for how much those opportunities would be, and be able to do it quickly. And thankfully, with flows, be able to save a lot of clicks and having to go a lot of different places. So within one screen, we wanted to be able to display, hey, who are all of the account team members? What are all of the opportunities? What's the status of all the opportunities? And really try to save as many clicks as you could to help drive more adoption within the system.
Great. Well, I'm excited to see how you built it. Can you show us?
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's get the show on the road. We're looking here at a homepage, and how we've implemented this flow was that I really love the utility bar. In our organization, I looked and most of our folks were using desktop, so we weren't big on mobile. And that allowed me to leverage the utility bar by adding the ScreenFlow here. And once you load it up, you can search either by the account number or the name. And we even put a couple of filters that would allow you to search for a specific type of customer based on account type. So there's a lot of stuff in this flow, which we'll get to, and you'll see some interesting things, reactive things happening. But if I start searching by account name, I'll start by selecting, I'll just select for all accounts here. So the first thing that it tells me is, okay, here are all of my accounts that contain the word Ashley. And it tells me where they're based. It tells me what type of customer they are. So that way they tell me the account number. So I can get a good glimpse and say, okay, now I can figure out what I'm looking for with a nifty little data table from Salesforce. So I can select the account. And then there's a couple of pieces of information here. I can do a couple of things. I can go back to the beginning if I want to. I can view the account details if I'm looking to see who's doing what. I can request access to the account, and or equally, if I don't find my account, only then after checking, I can give them an option to create a new account. So we pulled their permission to create accounts from their user profiles to prevent creating duplicates. And we allow them to use this flow that runs as system access under system access to be able to allow them to create it here. So it kind of forces them to search before they create. And equally, if they want to create a subsidiary, what'll happen is that this selection will become the parent account. So if someone else wants to own it, or if someone else needs to own the parent account, that's fine. I can create a subsidiary like my Walmart Mexico, let's just say. So I'll just go ahead and I want to view account details. I want to take a look. Go ahead and click next. So here I see the account name. I'll see any non-sensitive information, as this is a private org-wide default. I can take a look at the account type. I can take a look at the state. I can confirm who the team members are. So if I need to ping them on Teams or on Slack, I can ping them and ask any information that I need. And then equally, I can see any related opportunities. I can see the opportunity type. I can see who owns that opportunity. So I can see John Smith here own both opportunities. I can see the close date. And I can see that they're both open because there's no check mark to indicate that they're closed. So just some basic information to make sure that it is the one that I'm looking for. And equally, if I have an opportunity, let's say that Walmart Mexico equally reached out to me. Hey, I have there are some open opportunities here. Maybe this is something that we can turn into a global deal, and I can collaborate on this. So one of the things that I can do is that I can request the access to the account. And here I can select the level of access that I need. What this will do is that this will create a request for an account team member rule. And you fill in the necessary information, and then they can review it and they can create it. We'll show that in a second. Let's say I want to be a sales rep. I want to have read and write on the account. I don't need cases, and I want read and write on opportunities. So I'll go ahead and click next. And I got to fix this piece here, but you'll see how this plays a role. Because effectively you can see the message that you sent, and then basically said, okay, you may now close this window. So I'll go ahead and go back to the beginning. And what I've done now is that if I go to accounts, and I'm looking as a system admin. So now let's look at it from John Smith's perspective. If I come in, I'll get notified with a chatter notification tagged to the record that will say, hey, John Smith, access has been requested this account, some instructions, so that way they can look at it on the right side and follow the instructions, and they can click everything that they need here on the account team related list to be able to add the team member. And then you can see within the rest, the role that was requested. And if I have any comments or I want to ask Eric, why does he need access to this? I can just type it in and be able to send the information all via chatter notification. They get an email, as you guys are aware, and have a trace of how the account request was done. So this is an overview of the functionality. We can jump behind the scenes and take a look at the flow, so you can see all of the great stuff that's happening. But ultimately, like you guys can see, it's just a really, hopefully a more intuitive way for users to be able to navigate an org with private org-wide defaults with less mystery of having to find out who owns what accounts, better practices to keep your data clean, data well structured if you want to maintain your account hierarchies, and ultimately make everyone from the admin to the sales reps to the sales VPs and the rest of the IT team much, much happier and in a better place. So taking a quick look here at the flow, you can see that the flow does tend to get a little big, and there's a lot to unpack here. So there's a couple of things that are going on. And as always, I highly recommend that you guys put your description elements in here for anybody else that comes in after you, and they can understand what's going on. So with the start screen, again, it's basically taking a quick look at what you're going to be searching for. So we put the different types of accounts, and we have some conditional visibility based on if you start using one field versus the other, so you don't search both fields at the same time. And then equally, we'll assign a couple of variables, and we will go for our accounts. So what we typically do here is that we're trying to get all of our accounts based on either the name or the account number that you've entered in. And then what we'll do is that if you selected to get only customers or only prospects, just to try to follow the best practice of not having too many get elements, what we do is that we get all of the accounts within this one time, and then we filter the selection you've made based on the radio buttons all the way up here, so that we only return what the user is looking for. And then equally, which I think there's a How I Solved It episode for the greatness of subflows. I am a big fan of having an error message subflow just to give folks a better error handling experience. So anytime that something goes out of what I'm hoping to guide them through, I'll just display them an error message, and I'll pass through a default message that will display on the screen for them, so at least we give a good experience, or they can try again. And then here we have everything that's going on in the different possibilities. All of these are kind of like the next step situation. If you go back to the beginning, we reset all the variables to blank. We try not to let the flow end. So what we do is that we just redirect them back to the start screen and resetting all the variables back to blank. We also have to permit, because if they still want to create a new account, we have to permit them to not select anything on the data table. So we can't require selection here if they choose to create a new account. But if they choose anything other than create new account and don't have a selection, you might be able to validate the input somehow. And I haven't dabbled too much. What I've done was that I put something in here to basically say, hey, mark this as no selection. And I like to display a message to say, hey, you must select an account to move forward. So it just kind of cycles back, but this time with some component visibility to say, hey, no selection was made. Remind them that they have to select an account for the option that they've selected. You'll see two different styles of radio buttons here. So there is an input variable that I'll debug for a second that says enable account create. This is not zooming in well at all, but there is, so effectively you can use this where you can have it as a search functionality only, if depending on where you want to place it, or you can enable the user to be able to create accounts from it. So if they choose the option only to be able to search for accounts, then you don't get the options to create new subsidiaries or create new accounts, which you'll see here. And then, as always, to try to be as nice as possible and keep the data cleanliness folks as happy as possible, if they select that they're going to be creating a new account, we put some conditional visibility also just to let them know that, hey, you're going to be creating a new account. Please, please, please double check that you're not creating a duplicate, because we do run this as a system, right? We do run this with access all data. So you're kind of giving them super admin powers as they are working through this. If they're requesting account access, one of the easiest ways, we were dabbling with creating something to actually create like an approval process to say, hey, such and such requested approval. It is a little more complex, but with enough time, probably could be done. So all we've done was to handle this with a post to a chatter feed. And as always, if something goes wrong, there's a subflow displaying an error message. And continuing onwards, create subsidiary and create new account, very similar. The create subsidiary just has a single step to assign the parent account, and then back to the create account screen. Once that's done, it creates a new account, and we can provide a link to the new account. So if the account was created successfully, you can even give the link to the account. If they choose to click that, it'll send them straight to the new account. So if, again, picture from the utility bar, if you just created your brand new account, you're here, You'll get that message right here. You click that link and boom, that'll open the brand new account that you've created, let's just say, just like so. And all right, so, and then the view account team, there's a couple of interesting tricks here. And the key thing, and as of spring 24, I don't know that summer 24 resolved this or addressed this either way. But one of the challenges that I've encountered with the data table right now is that the data table cannot look up when it comes to columns. So, and one of the challenges is that if you're looking, for example, account team members, the full name doesn't exist at the account team level. The user ID does. So if you try to add a column, you'll see that you can pull the user ID, but that'll just bring in the unique identifier. It won't bring the person's name that sits at the user record. So one of the clever things that I've learned from a good colleague of mine was that we'll get the account team members and we'll loop them just like we're looping the opportunities. We're looping them, and if you take any text field, so for example, I took the title field at the account team member level, and I set it with a formula of the full name. So technically, it displays the person's name. If you'll remember when we did the demo, it'll display the full name here, thanks to the formula. However, the real secret is that this is the title field, and we've just used the custom column label to say full name instead. Don't save this collection, because that will look really weird. But for display purposes, this works. At least this was a workaround until we get an awesome release, and we got to bug our friend Adam White over in the product team, so that way we can start looking up a field or an object or two to our data tables. I'm sure that'll come out in a near release. Same thing with related opportunities, the opportunity owner. You have the owner ID. So you'll see that we pull the related opportunities, and we use the next action field to set our, or the next step field, to set the name of the owner instead of returning the owner ID. So a couple of clever tricks to be able to give users a really great experience. And ultimately, as always, if something goes awry on the default outcome, which is the outcome that I don't want them to go through, then we'll just display an error message. And overall, this is how we solved for managing searching for accounts and requesting access to accounts in a private org-wide default setting where admins don't have to get bugged every 5 minutes with users asking people to get access to all accounts. And the good news here is that if you're excited about everything you've seen and you want to try this yourself, or you want to get behind the scenes with this flow, I put together an unmanaged package that you can install on your very own dev org, so you can see how all of the moving pieces in this flow works. And if it's useful to you and your organization, modify it to your needs so you guys can also leverage this amazing functionality within your orgs. So to recap, we've built a screen flow that allowed us to do several different things. It allowed us to establish good practices in managing accounts, be it managing account hierarchies or even account creation, by using the screen flow to give users the ability to search before they create a new account. Equally, this tool allows users in a private org-wide default setting to be able to carry out all of these activities and collaborate with these account owners from different departments without having to bog down power users or system administrators, which ultimately leads to avoiding any poor data quality issues or mitigating the risks of poor data quality issues by really helping make sure that there is a check in a good user experience check in trying to manage your accounts within the CRM. And back to you, Jen.
Thank you, Eric, for showing us your solution. I love the creativity of using that screen flow to solve the issue where users can view limited data, right, but not have access to all of it. And then they could then create those new account records without avoiding duplicates. And I love seeing component visibility in your screen flows and subflows, which makes life easier in managing your automation. So thanks for that.
Yeah, again, it's about tinkering. It's about seeing what you can get away with and leveraging all the tools that you have available to you.
You just saw how Erick Mahle solved the business challenge of addressing data consistency issues with a private sharing model, using a screen flow that ensures his users can easily find accounts before creating any duplicates and helping associate any subsidiary accounts to their parent accounts that they might not have access to. Great solution. You can always find videos like this by going to admin.salesforce.com or by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Salesforce Admins, so you will never miss another episode of How I Solved It. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.